Welcome to our Startup Visa webinar, how to be admitted to an incubator or any other designated organization. That's the key for today's webinar. My name is Reza. I'm a licensed immigration practitioner based in Canada. And we have our panel members, Ehsan from Launchpath and Slava, that will be doing a very detailed introduction representing a designated organization. This is one of a multitude of webinars that we are planning to release over the coming months. And everyone from all over the world will be joining us today to discuss how to be admitted to the Startup Visa webinar. And the key is we're going to have some heated questions, some loaded questions for our panel members today. So unlike other webinars, which have a lot of fluff, today, during the Q&A session, at the end of the webinar, you can ask anything except my bank PIN number or my passwords. And of course, the same rule goes to the panel members. You can ask anything. And I'm going to ask some really tough questions from Slava and Ehsan about the Startup Visa program. Okay, so if you're joining us today, you want to know, well, should I be even listening? Why should I be even here? Well, it's for new startup founders who have not decided yet whether they should be moving to Canada under the Startup Visa program. So they're still in limbo, or startup groups and co-founders who have decided, but they're still in the decision-making process. They're negotiating, they're researching, they're figuring out how to apply, where to apply, and the whole process. And of course, investors seeking to invest in innovative, genuine startups for their startup visa application. And of course, immigration practitioners and agents and even business consultants who are stakeholders in the startup visa web industry, or they're planning to be more active in the industry, right? This is a 3-for-1 webinar. Why am I saying a 3-for-1? Well, it's simple. You get the immigration side from us. You get the business consulting side from Launchpath, which is pre-LOS, due diligence, and post-LOS support. And of course, you get the designated organization represented by Slava Appel today. So you get all three in one, and that's why we call it a 3-for-1 webinar. You will understand how a designated organization processes, makes a decision, what is the insight into how these designated organizations select and endorse startups under the Startup Visa program, okay? And of course, quick introduction, we have Slava Appel representing the designated organizations at Yeti. He's a partner at York Angel Investors. And of course, Yeti has a venture capital arm and is a designated incubator. So you've got 3 designated organizations being represented by one person. Hello, Slava. Nice to see you today.
Hello, everyone.
Perfect. And of course, we have Ehsan Daneshgar, who is an ex-incubator himself. He's spent a large portion of his career working for a government incubator here in Ontario, and he was moved to the private sector, founded Launchpath, which is a startup studio and a business immigration hub, which helps startups, vetting startups, giving them pre-letter of support services, advice, helping them in the admission process, the due diligence, and especially with the post letter of support, making sure they're successful. And of course, Launchpath helps both startup visa applicants and any other entrepreneurial type groups and applicants. We're going to start with Ehsan's presentation. As I said, he's the CEO of Launchpath, which is based in Toronto, a startup studio. Of course, first-generation immigrant, just like myself, and he helps and specializes in commercialization services for entrepreneurs and startups. And throughout the entire startup journey, he is there supporting the groups and co-founders and sole founders that are going through this path to Canada. Ehsan, welcome to the webinar. Nice to see you.
Thanks, Reza.
Yes.
Good to see you, Slava.
Great
Perfect.
energy, by the way. What coffee are you drinking in the
Yeah,
morning?
I'm not. Sorry, I drink green tea, no
Nice.
coffee. I have
That's
caffeine,
why.
but it comes from different source.
Right on.
Perfect, perfect. So
Uh,
again, folks, after the presentations, we will be doing a Q&A, and you can ask any questions that are related to startup visa and Canadian side of immigration.
welcome, everyone, to the webinar today. Thanks, Reza, and the team for putting together this event. My name is Ehsan, and we are a startup studio and a business immigration hub. We started 11 years ago, primarily helping Canadian startups with the go-to-market strategy, raising funds from institutional investors, running workshops and seminars for entrepreneurs, as you see in the picture. And we are a team of experienced advisors who have experience working in uh, incubators, VC firms, all the places that you're actually sending your application to. We've been sitting on the other side of the table, the receiving end of all these applications. So we know uh, what criteria you're being evaluated with. Just to explain that startup visa stakeholder pieces, as Reza mentioned, and where Launchpath comes in. This is you as the startup visa applicant, and this is the IRCC that you want to get to with a successful application. And in this journey, of course, you need a letter of support from a designated organization, and for sure, an immigration partner to evaluate your criteria to help you make sure that you have everything right before you submit your IRCC application. And here we sit in the middle to help you get to a successful application and successful LOS with a designated organization. And of course, we come in after as well, which I'm going to explain. So our services, just to quickly explain, are pre-LOS services where we help you, similar to soft landing your business in Canada. We helped you with the warm introductions and soft landing into Incubator, a designated organization program. We offer a variety of services from mentorship, coaching, feasibility study, business plan, market research, preparing you for the interviews and pitch sessions. And these are all the services that similarly we've been offering for all the Canadian startups previously. Now, just we've been offering them for international entrepreneurs. And then, of course, the startup visa process doesn't end there. Once you have a successful letter of support and you have submitted your application for IRCC, that's when actually your startup visa process starts. So this is where we come in, help you with the post LOS, because you have 2 years. Now in 2 years, you need to show that this business is running. You have traction. These are all the services that we help you to make sure that you are on top of your business plan, everything that you've claimed, and you're executing one after another. Another area that we help is with prototyping, product development, helping you get those tractions that you need and show proof that you have been a successful startup. So today, I'm actually going to talk about 5 common mistakes when startup founders do when approaching designated organizations. So number 1 in my list, and this list is actually coming not only from me, but also from our partners in designated organizations every time we talk. These are top 5 that we see always happening. And of course, it's going to impact your relationship with your designated organization and definitely how you're going to get the letter of support. So communication is number 1. And by communication, I understand that some international entrepreneurs, English is not their first language, but this is not the main problem I'm talking about. It starts with how you approach. First of all, there's a big list of designated organizations. How are you going to choose the right one that's a best fit for you? And then how are you approaching? as I said, we've been sitting on the other side of the table as on the receiving end of these applications, and we always see that the way that the application is filled, the way the documents, the information is presented, it raises a lot of flags. And so these are the things that entrepreneurs should avoid before approaching a designated organization. That's where we come in and help. The other thing is presentation. So how do you articulate your value proposition? You have a business, you have an innovation, you have a startup. Are you presenting it well with the standards that are expected from a startup? This is similar to when startups want to approach venture capitals or investment firms. They still need help to understand how they need to present themselves. And how do you respond to the requests? I'll just give you an example where we sometimes get approached by startups who have already started their application with a designated organization. We had an example that actually told us that we haven't heard from our designated organization in 2 months. And I asked immediately that, what was the last communication? Did they ask you something? And then their response was that, yes, they asked us for some things. We're preparing it. It was like 2 months ago. So immediately, that's another flag that I would like to mention, the red flag, that how you respond to your designated organization. If I'm asking you to do something and you get back to me in a day or in a week, that shows how serious you are about your application. But if it takes you 2 months, and we understand sometimes things are confusing, challenging for you, and that's why we are here and offer services to help you cover those gaps. We help you immediately get back to your incubator, understand what exactly the ask is. So I would put communication as number one. Number two, this is always a difficult question to answer, that what is innovation? What is innovative about my product? What is IRCC's criteria of innovation? What is the designated organization's criteria of innovation? Startups often don't know how to define their innovation. Just because you have all the features that the existing products don't have, that doesn't mean you're innovative. And we often get questions that, I have a patent. Does that qualify as innovation? Yes and no. It's way deeper than that. What is the innovation about? And then, of course, the question comes about the intellectual property. How are you protecting your intellectual property? Patent is one way, and of course, Canada is looking to secure more patent, make revenue, have companies that are making more revenue out of the intellectual property rights, but sometimes maybe patent is not the best way for you. So again, number two, it's tied to number one. It's how you define and communicate your values and the core pieces of your business. And that leads me to number three, which is tied to number two in a way. It's product versus business. So I hear all the time from our partners in designated organizations that they talk about applicants, that they send their pitch deck, beautiful pitch deck, but it's just about a simple product. It's nice, but a product is a product. You can just, license it to someone, they will manufacture, sell it, and they will pay you royalties. We are looking for businesses, or basically IRCC is looking for businesses. How do you define a business? Just having a product that's innovative, it's not going to guarantee that you have a business. Business is all about turning a product into a successful business. What is your core technology? As we said in number two, with common mistakes, core technology. What is that core technology? And what are your capabilities in the company to turn that into a business? What is the roadmap? What if another competition comes in with a better product? What is your plan to compete with them? I'll give you an example of, for example, Dyson. Dyson is a company that has a core technology. It's all about innovative ways of, turning the airflow into different products, and they have their own way. So that can be a blow dryer, that can be a vacuum cleaner. These are all the different ways of products, and whatever the market demand is, they're capable of finding a new product. And they, of course, they've been able to build a business around it. So this is number 3. You need to be careful about how you present your business to not look just as like a product. It has to be way more comprehensive when you approach a designated organization. And number 4, just because of the flow of the presentation, I put this as number 4, but this, I can easily say it's number 1, or it can definitely be number 1, financials. I always hear from designated organizations and also from the feedback that we receive from designated organizations that the financial projections, financials that startups submit to them, it's always off. It's as if they have no understanding of the Canadian market. Their metrics and assumptions are wrong. Their projections are either too conservative, which is not a suitable way of presenting yourself as a startup, or they're way too ambitious, which makes people question, do you actually know what you're doing? And then it comes to investment amount too. It's important for the startup, plus for IRCC as somebody, as an organization that's going to approve your application, is going to look at the investment amount. And investment amount is different for each startup. How well do you know your business, the requirements in Canada, and your investment amount? And finally, number 5, a very important mistake, like very important one in the list, and a mistake that startups make all the time. They have a great application, they write everything in their business plan, but for the sake of startup visa program, and the fact that they're presenting themselves to the government of Canada, they need to be clear on what is the benefit to Canada. Yes, it's an innovative product. It's great. It creates job. Creating job, it's basically standard. Everybody can claim that in a business. Although I still see people forget mentioning that. But creating jobs, yeah, that's everybody knows. What is the benefit to Canada? What problems do we have in Canada that this innovation and business is going to solve? So they missed that. And also Canadian regulations and barriers. Entrepreneurs, not only they're not aware of them, but their business plans, their strategy is missing all of those. Plus, some of these barriers are not necessarily regulations, they're cultural, they're just some intelligence about how Canada is. Great examples of a lot of American companies that they have expanded to Canada and failed. Target was one of them. Nordstrom was the recent one. There are a lot of companies that they expand to Canada and miss this tiny little checklist basically on their to-do list, and that becomes a pain point for them eventually and the reason for their failure. And of course, the plan that they have, it's missing on the strategies and tactics. This is a great plan, all of it, it's fine. But what are your tactics to get this implemented and get some traction? And those are top 5 mistakes that entrepreneurs make and pieces that they miss in their presentations, in the way they approach designated organizations. And eventually, unfortunately, that can make it all the way to their application for IRCC, because not all documents are presented to the designated organization. The consistency, that the communication that I said number 1 is because there are information that are not consistent from the beginning to the end, and it's easy for an IRCC officer to spot those. Working with us, with an immigration consultant, along with your designated organization, guarantees that all three stakeholders are seeing all the documentations that they have to see and raise the flag if they see something that's not right.
Thank you, Ehsan. Appreciate it. So I hope everyone paid attention, because everyone thinks, oh, it's startup. I just fill out a form and apply, right? There's a lot of intricacies that are part of being a successful startup. So you can either be a not so successful startup or a successful, and just emailing a designated organization or filling out the form on their website, is that going to get you endorsed, letter of support, and a successful application with IRCC? I don't think so. Mr. Slava Appel. Some people call him the godfather of the modern startup visa. He is a mentor instructor at YEDI, a nonprofit organization, which is both a designated organization as an incubator and a designated organization as a venture capital. In addition to that, he's also a partner at York Angel Investors, which is another designated organization in the Angel Investor Group that links entrepreneurs and investors and partners for growth and success. If anyone knows about designated organizations, how they think, how they process, what happens in that little black box before that letter of support or endorsement is issued, it is Slava Appel. Thank you, Slava. Welcome.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you, Reza, for organizing this event. I am hoping to simplify the path, the expansion path to Canada, whether you are a brand new startup or if you have something that you have had there for a while as well. So let's start off with that Canada wants entrepreneurs. So it wants innovators to come here. One of the reasons that about a third of all early stage entrepreneurs, they found out, are first and second generation immigrants. Now, the path, the way that Ehsan has already displayed to us, requires you to qualify. And qualification comes in two different ways. From the point of the designated organization, we want to make sure that your business is ready, but you also have to be ready as the person. And what does it mean? You have to have the basic understanding of English, which is English or French, scale 5 out of 12 on IELTS or Canadian language benchmark. You have to have sufficient settlement funds and as well potentially business funds as well. You have to be clean when it comes to medical and criminal clearance. That's typically one of the questions we ask, because if we do a lot of due diligence, vetting and assessing of your file, and then we find that you're inadmissible, not such a great thing for our confidence in you or your business. Mainly, we are looking for an innovative startup, and what you need is that support from the designated organization. Now, this is not high volume based migration path. Only best of the best come through that. And to illustrate it, from the beginning, since 2013, when this path opened up and when it was still in that kind of trial mode for the first 5 years, less than 1,000 approvals were given in the first 5 years. So again, best of the best need to apply with this particular path. And that's where people like Ehsan and his organization can help you identify whether your application is right or not. So how do you get through? Well, the most important document in this path, from my perspective, is for you to get the letter of support. And the letter of support is given to you, the applicant, by the designated organization. Could it be angel group or venture capital group or an incubator, as the proof that they will support your idea, that they will go together with you to the very end, that they will help you soft land here, either through investment or through mentorship. And that's what it looks like. It's actually, by the time you get it in your hands, it's almost a disappointing document. It's a 2-page PDF document. So where should you be applying? It is all based on how early or how mature is your company today. And to illustrate that, if you are just starting, you have an idea for a business, you've researched that idea already, and you're willing to come and kind of develop that company here in Canada, we consider that as an early stage or whiteboard or initial product release or potentially even minimum viable product of a company. When your company is this early, best way for you to come to Canada is through an incubator. And maybe you can touch on an angel if you are able to patent that idea, or if you were able to prove that there is going to be some traction. If you already are generating lots of great revenues, this is the time for you either to go to angel group or venture capital. So there's a big continuum of growth of your company. Where should you be applying? The way that I would simplify it, if you're coming to Canada with this new business as a brand new business or an expansion of the business, if you're looking for mentorship, incubators, accelerators, that's what's better for you. If you are already coming here with something that's up and running, then investment path, angel groups, venture capitals groups are for you. The biggest difference whenever I look at a business, where is it better? And quite often upon me reviewing someone's application and doing due diligence on it, I'll tell them, you are way too early for an angel fund, might as well go and apply for an incubator. So we will let you know if you're applying to the wrong path. So when I am looking at it, I'm seeing what is best for the company. At an incubator, you can apply at any stage. Mature company, early stage. Incubators provide mentorship, provide post-lending service. Main goal is acceleration of your business, that's support. And intake typically is ongoing. There's over 30 incubators in Canada that are designated to help you with that. When it comes to venture capital and angel investment groups, they typically work with already operating companies. They provide funding, angels $75,000 at the minimum, for shares of your company. So it's not free money. You are parting with some of the shares of your company. And venture capitalists, 200,000 and higher, again, for shares of your company to show that they are interested in helping you and supporting you. There are also differences. Incubators will take any number of partners between 1 and 5. 5 is the maximum under this program. However, venture capitalists and angel investors, number one thing that they're looking for is the team. Can the team execute that business idea? So I'm seeing a lot more people that are applying that are multi-member partners within one organization. So again, venture capitalists and angel investment, they take in equity in the business. So easier way to see that when we're looking at the business, incubators, they accept you into incubator. They accelerate, they help you with the business, they're better in the feasibility stage of the company. Angel investment companies, angel investors, there's 9 of them that are certified for Startup Visa to issue you that letter of support. In Canada, they have to put in at least $75,000 into your company. They're better for you if you're already in the viability. You've proven that your company will survive, will grow. Venture capitalists are better for those largely scaling big companies making $1 million and above when they are arriving here. Now, when it comes to total volume of people applying, now I work in all 3 sectors. I work in an incubator path, in angel path, and a venture capital path. So I see sometimes the same application, which is one of the mistakes, in all 3 different incubators or in all 3, well, in all incubator, angel groups, and venture capital paths. So most of the approvals today are coming through incubators. This is from Government of Canada statistics. Most of the people that are applying, they're coming through incubators because a lot of the companies we're seeing are earlier stage companies as well. So what are all 3 looking for? They're looking for innovation. Ehsan was right about that. Established revenue model, airtight business model, proven business model. They want to see that you've done competitive research. You have a great marketing strategy. You have a great reason for you to start this company in Canada versus anywhere else in the world. You have to have that relevant experience. You have to have full business venture package ready to go. You cannot be at the beginning stages of building out your documentation. You have to have the potential to hire Canadians. Hopefully you have already had success in previous country. You have to potentially have active users and buyers, and you have to move to Canada, all of the founders, majority, at least 51% of intellectual property. Again, not everyone that applies can get in. To give you some statistics behind it, by the 5th year of Startup Visa program, in Canada in 2017, there were 8,500 people applying for angel and venture capital routes. A lot of them thought to themselves, hey, I can apply, I can get some funding, maybe that's going to help me grow the company. So this is both in Canada and outside of the Canada. Out of those 8,500, only 1,200 got to present. Only 442 got to funding. And here's the bad news. there is a lot of bad applications. And I'm going to go through some of the reasons why we would reject them as well. But out of those 442 that funded, again, in Canada and outside of Canada, approximately 3 got to the level of permanent residency, because for entire Canada in that year, between 195 and 229 total permanent residency approvals in this program. So again, this is not for those people that are completely not ready. You have to have a full ready to go business package. This is where consultants will help you with that as well. Now, I've seen applications almost from every country. If I pick a sample, just a sample of the applications that I have vetted, I'm seeing a lot of them came from Iran, India, Pakistan, Hong Kong, Vietnam, from all over the world. And what, again, we're looking for when I am vetting. So as a processor, in my experience, for the last 2 years of vetting files and approving them for the letter of support, for one of, let's say, 9 designated organizations, for one of the angel groups, York Angels, number one thing that I was looking for, will a company be scalable? Will they have sufficient funds to have a runway to run their company? Do they have a hiring plan? Do they have a full business plan? Is there business needed here in Canada? Are the co-founders, if there are multiple people, essential? Mainly, do they have that innovation and IP strategy? For those of you that don't know what innovation is, it could be many different things: patent, trademark, intellectual property. Some may rely just on copyright, authorship, know-how. They have great research and development. It could be a new product or a new service or a new process, or it could be an international license. There's many things that we're looking for when we're looking for that innovation. Number one thing that I'm proud of, here in Canada, we brought in a lot of great innovators. The biggest company, the biggest name that has ever gone through, it was 3 brothers coming from Iran. The company is called Applied Board. Their company today, after arriving to Canada, after establishing, is now worth close to $4 billion. Now, not every one of you coming through this path will be worth $4 billion. And your company could be just worth $100,000 or $1 million. But the intent is, Government of Canada is looking for those opportunities to bring innovators to Canada. At this point, I'll pass it back on. But if you are, and we are traveling, you can, if you are happen to be in England, we're going to be there in May, or in Malta, we're going to be there in May. And our team is also sponsoring Canadian Bar Association National Immigration Law Conference in Ottawa. So if you are around, you can meet up with us there as well. Back to you, Reza.
Thank you, Slava. There you go, folks. You have the full insight into how a designated organization. So that was a little bit of information overload, but the moral of the story is you need the support throughout the entire process. It's not a simple process, but it can be. And that's the key. Quick overview. I'm not going to do a presentation, folks. Just have to talk about Ingwe Immigration. Otherwise, I'll be fired. Right? Got to promote my own company. So we are a licensed team of immigration practitioners here in Canada, helping clients across Canada, no matter what program you select. Our team speaks over 9 languages, folks. Okay, we're ready, we're equipped, we have experience dealing with your country's specific documentation. And of course, the communication will be smooth flowing. We have liability insurance of $1 million. So if we screw up or there's some kind of fraud, the insurance company comes in, flies in, and takes care of everything. And we've assisted startup visa groups navigate through the immigration path. And as Slava mentioned, and Ehsan, there's a lot of people who are not even eligible, or they have issues and they don't disclose it. And that's a big chunk of why somebody could be refused. Consultations, of course, I'm always meeting, and my team is meeting sole founders, co-founders across Canada and overseas who are in the process, or before they apply for a designated organization, or during their work permit and PR processing. And we provide that immigration advice. We answer the questions, all those questions that IRCC is not answering, because they don't respond to you on web forms. They don't respond to you over the phone, right? We all know that. That's why we're here. That's why immigration practitioners are here. And of course, we're updated on the most recent trends and policies within the startup visa world. A lot of the stuff that they don't publish online, or the practices IRCC uses, that is within their own embassies and processing centers, and that is they don't disclose to you. We're talking with designated organizations such as Slava, with business consultants such as Ehsan. So there's hundreds of groups where all this data is coming in, and we're always talking and finding out what's happening so we can provide proper, recent, and the latest trends in terms of how to navigate through the startup visa world to come to Canada. And of course, we have to offer you a promotion, because if you don't, then maybe I'll fail my next marketing class. And there you go, folks, 50%. You can use this promo code at the bottom of your screen, SUV webinar. When you go on our store, ingwe.ca/store, you can use it to do a one-on-one consultation with me or any of my licensed team members, whether it's startup visa, whether you're worried about the work permit, whether you want to apply, you don't know how to, or you're looking for innovation and to joining a group, whether a co-founder or sole founder, or not even a founder yet. We are here to help. And we're going to go into the Q&A session. There's some great questions I've seen in the chat box. So that's excellent. We're going to open up the floor. But first, I'm going to be asking some tough questions. And if any of you watch my YouTube channel, you know we're about the truth, nothing but the truth. So help me, the Minister of Immigration. Okay? So a few curveballs, let's say. First one, and then right after, we're going to go to your questions, folks, in the Q&A chat box. So Slava, the first one is for you. Okay, let's forget all the fluff. There's a lot of people in the industry or outside of the industry that are saying that there are refusals in the startup visa applications, right? Why would somebody be refused, and why would somebody end up going into like being part of the startup visa process and being refused? So let us know, Slava, what's happening there, and let's put all this, let's say, speculation of why some webinars are not talking about both sides of the startup visa world. So please give us your insight into that.
Sure, thank you. Well, besides my experience working at processing and vetting and doing due diligence through York Angels for the past 2 years and working on hundreds of files, I have seen hundreds of other files going through multiple designated incubators like Yeti, PICA, RoseU, TBDC, many other ones as well. So there are reasons why an angel file would fail, and there are reasons why an incubator file would fail. Let's start off with those that are requesting work permit. We are seeing a lot of the applicants saying, I want to come to Canada sooner. I would like to get a work permit before me even getting permanent residency. Well, that process of getting work permit, we have to identify the reasons why must you be here faster than anyone else. And in that, you have to put out a list of items that you have to achieve while you're here. What's that one reason that you cannot wait? What's that one reason why you cannot do that business from overseas? So number one reason out of all of the reasons that I see people fail is they request a work permit and then they don't actually do the work underneath that closed work permit, meaning there's no progress. They're not showing any activity in that business. So that's the number one thing that I see. Another thing, even before the refusal from Government of Canada, there is a process that is set in place that says that if the business looks suspicious, as in will it succeed or not, is it innovative or not, there is a process also called a peer review. And I've defended a lot of files successfully in peer review, and that's where the nature of the due diligence on the file gets questioned. Was the incubator or an angel investment group or a venture capital group, like, were they involved deep enough in that business, understanding it, and did they approve it for the right reasons or not? So I'm seeing a lot of refusals as well, where the due diligence was not properly done on that file. So I would say those are the top two reasons: not enough due diligence, and for those people that are on a work permit, they did not do enough to show that significant progress in a business.
Perfect. Thank you, Slava. That makes perfect sense. And I'm going to continue on that subject to Ehsan. And Ehsan, based on that, in terms of the refusal side, what is the weirdest or the most unusual startup group or concept that you've seen that was set for failure? And perhaps they didn't work, they came to you, you saw it, and then they disappeared into the startup visa ecosystem. What is it that, and that plays in line with, about this whole refusal thing. So tell us your experience.
That's a good question. I wasn't expecting that, but so one thing that I've seen, or going back to your specific question, like startups that we see and that immediately raises that flag that that's gonna look like it's gonna be another failure. A lot of ideas are very similar to each other. It shows that there hasn't been enough research. There are millions of copies of that already in the world, and the founding team doesn't have that relevance to the idea. They don't show that they can pull this off. So that's, of course, it's very obvious for everyone to understand that it's set for the failure. Plus, for this specific one that I have in mind, not only the idea was very, copy, in my opinion, but also the documentation that I saw. It wasn't very comprehensive. Like I would say, even just simply, the business plan fonts were bigger just to show that the business plan pages are more. So this is how you set a business for a startup case for failure, with all these flaws that it's so evident for everyone to understand. You don't need to go through a lot of checks and balances.
Oh, that's perfect. Yes, thank you, Ehsan. And I think you both agree. There's a lot of, let's say, participants in the startup visa world who are trying to fake it to make it, but are actually ruining a lot of startups visa chances, or people, co-founders who are planning to come to Canada to basically continue their business, right? There's too many, I think, participants, and a lot of them are not experienced enough to guide the startup visa groups, right, Slava?
Absolutely. I see that all the time, what comes across my desk. And let's say if I pick a specific segment, 300 applications came in for the angel track. Out of those 300 applications, 200 identified they did not even have a business plan. 50 of those identified they had previous criminal records. Well, they're just not inadmissible. And 20 blatantly said, I don't even have a business idea. So when we asked them a question, how did you hear about us? It went through those, and this is Reza where you said the other operators out there that said, well, just spray your application all over, give it to every angel group. Maybe someone is going to approve you.
Yeah, no, that's 100% correct. And thank you for that insight into what you see on your desk, representing 3 designated organization folks here with us, Slava. And thank you, Ehsan, for putting shedding light into how people are just sending things that are pre-kindergarten in certain cases in terms of the documentation. So we're going to go into the Q&A session now, okay? And I'm just going to add on top of what Slava and Ehsan said about refusals, okay? If you don't want to be approved when you join a group or when you're investing in a startup as an investor, do you have upfront medical? Do you have police clearance certificates from your co-founders? Do you know them well enough? Have they been pre-vetted for eligibility? Well, we do that, right? And if you haven't, you can be a percentage of those refusals that are based on eligibility, right? So basically, the easiest mistakes to make are being part of a startup or investing in one, or not knowing that somebody who's in your group has criminality or medical issues, or can't even get the language score, which is a huge red flag. But if you vet them, it can be done, right? And that's the most basic, and everyone should know that. But unfortunately, many participants in the industry or just eager to get a client, there's a key question you will have to ask anyone who you work with as your startup visa advisors or consultants. How many groups have you done? How many have been successful? How many are in process? And how many are refused? If they tell you 100% have been approved, well, they're just blatantly lying to you. Okay? Or if they tell you, oh, I can't, there's a confidentiality, I can give you a number for any of my clients and they'd be happy to talk to you, right? Happy client, happy referral, but unhappy client, there's no referral, right? So let's get into the Q&A questions. There's some very interesting questions. Okay, I'm just gonna try to find the Q&A session. So there's some very interesting questions. I'm gonna go to this one first. So 2 days ago, anonymous attendee, 15 people all over the world participated in a seminar organized by Empower Startups in Vancouver, if many of you don't know. Also a designated organization, an incubator owned. And they also pump out the most number of letters of support in the entire program, just FYI. Ms. Kelly says, quote unquote, the cost of legal non-refundable charge will be $20,000 before processing you as a startup. The question is, what will be the actual cost for the business incubators? Okay, every incubator is different, right? And the key is, why would you pay $20,000 that's non-refundable? And then they could potentially come to you and say, oh, you don't have this, or you don't meet our criteria. That is just common nonsense. And that's where organizations such as ASON, like Launchpath, can come in at a fraction of that and pre-vet you and give you a money back guarantee, right? That they will guarantee their quality of work that will lead you and guide you to the ultimate destination that you're looking for, perhaps the letter of support, on a guaranteed basis, right? So going into a designated organization, paying something that is non-refundable and there's a million question marks is a little bit of a red flag. And incubators have different costs, right, Slava? I mean, the business incubator cost, the venture capital, the angel, everyone has different costs from $0 to $1 million. I'm sure there's everything in between as well, right?
Absolutely right. So for the record, York Angel Investors does not charge a vetting fee. It is absolutely free. So are the many of the incubators where I'm involved with, except many of the times the files we don't get, they're just not passable. So at a glance, it's passable or not. And of course, if the file is from somebody like his son, is like, okay, we know there's going to be some meat behind it, that we should pay extra attention to it.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's exactly. So you have to be shopping around, folks, right? Checking to make sure, just because you participated in a webinar or an event and one designated organization told you one thing, well, it doesn't mean it's always that, or that's your only option. And this is why this is a 3-in-1 webinar. I'm not a designated organization. Slava is representing 3. Launchpath is representing the consulting side to prep and support startups. So we can tell you the truth and all the way on full transparency. So let's look at Tanya's question. Very good question, saying, what is the current waiting time for the startup visa processing through an incubator? So Tanya, to get processed through an incubator, I'll give that to Slava. But in terms of the immigration process, if you look online on the IRCC website, I think it says 32, 33 months. But in actual fact, new startups that apply today will be processed in 1.5 years. That is the new processing time that is not yet published, because the IRCC website is historical. So it's based on the historical processing times, and all those startups that were stuck in 2020 and 2021, right, have that longer processing time that's published. But the new startups that are applying now have the fastest processing that we've seen since the pandemic. And then I'll give it to Slava to talk about how long it takes to go through the incubator from ground zero to the letter of support, Slava.
Sure. I would say that 80% of the cases, the letter of support has been issued in about 3 months. There are some cases that are taking longer, 6 to 9 months, because by the time we ask to submit more information, they're just that slow in communication with us. And in some of the cases, we find some things that are just not passable. So we ask them to go back and fix up. When it comes to an angel path, there are multiple levels of approvals before due diligence, and then the committee overseeing that it's an investable company. Again, it takes about 3 to 6 months to achieve to that level of the letter of support. And after that, immigration professional Reza would file for the permanent residency, which takes, as advertised on Government of Canada website. But it all really stems from how ready is your file? How good is that idea? Because to hear no, that's very fast. We're going to take a look at it. It's passable or not. But to get to the letter of support, once your file is identified as something that is either investable or should be included in an incubator, that one, again, 80% of the cases, about 3 months to the letter of support.
Perfect. Thank you, Slava. There's another question. I think it's from Vanit about the duration of the letter of support is issued, which is basically the same question. But just keep in mind, Vanit, that after this whole process, the letter of support is valid for 6 months. The letter of support allows you within 6 months to apply for your permanent residency. And if you're an essential member and it's stated that it is urgent for you to come to Canada to start or continue your business, you would be eligible also within that 6 months to apply for work permit. There's some interesting questions. And, there's a lot of questions here. So we're going to look at a few here. So Ehsan, what do you think about this one? Tanya is asking, can a startup be an online business with the main applicant staying and operating in Canada?
Well, it can be an online business, like if it's an online platform, it's a startup. We have a lot of that. If I understand the question correctly, the main applicant wants to move to Canada and stay in Canada or remain in there.
Basically, they're saying, I'm sitting at my office or home and my business is all online. I don't have a brick and mortar, right? Is that eligible for the startup visa program? Is that going to create any red flags for IRCC or the incubators, perhaps?
I don't see any reason to be a problem as long as you show actual activity. If you're sitting at home doing all the right things that you claim in your business plan, you show that you have progress in the business, you're talking to your customers, or if you're on the R&D minimum viable product stage, are you actually making progress? Do you have a website? Do you have an online? If it's an online, okay, is this really happening or not? So I don't think there's a reason to be worried about that.
Okay, perfect. Slava, do you agree with that? Do you concur?
Absolutely. And this is not an anecdotal. This is an actual conversation I had with the Minister of Immigration. So with Sean Fraser. So we met up at the last event in Collision and I asked him, well, how do you feel about this program? And he's on the record, off the record, however you want to see it, saying, well, too many IT companies. I want to see more brick and mortar. So in fact, there are a lot of companies that are coming here that are online IT, internet technology companies only historically. And yes, there is time for diversification and bringing in product or manufacturing or other items here as well. But yes, majority to this date were companies just like you described, IT or online companies.
Very nice. Thank you. Thank you, Zai. So here's a specific question for Slava. So this person actually just specifically wanted to ask you, and they're an anonymous attendee. Question to Slava regarding showing business activity on work permit. Can you please elaborate on that? Very clearly, it is not possible to start generating revenue for a startup. It needs development, market survey, building client base, preparing for early field trials, etc. What exactly counts as quote unquote enough business activity? Kindly provide details and not fluff. I think they just took what I was saying. So this is a question for you, Slava, specifically that they mentioned.
There is no one way to answer besides one word. What government is looking for is significant progress. I guess two words, significant progress. And it is up to the agent that is reviewing your file to determine whether it has been significant progress or not. So we've seen a case in federal court where a lady has been working for 2 years on her logo. Well, that is not significant activity. This is not significant progress. But as you are asking, building client base, that's good. Attending trade shows, that's good. Doing additional research, that's good. If you have a manufacturing company, there's not a lot of things you're doing, but you could be already looking for real estate, speaking to leasing agents, getting quotes on equipment. So whatever makes sense for that particular business, and every business is different. If you are going to be in manufacturing or in IT, the set of activity is different. So summing it up, significant progress as determined by agent. If you don't like their answer, then later on, you can appeal it. But very first thing, their litmus test is, can I call it significant activity or significant progress in that business? One of the better ways to do it, upon getting your letter of support, you are already outlining what you're going to be doing for the next year, 2 years, 3 years in your company. So the designated organization can give you their point of view, whether they consider that your activities are going to be significant enough or not. Now, the agent that is reviewing the file does not have to listen to the designated organization. However, they do take in account how they have gone through and done the due diligence on your file.
Perfect. Thank you, Slava. And it's correct. It varies, right? But all those are good examples. And one example I like to also mention is perhaps you're hosting an event. You're a startup. You've invited it, stakeholders in the industry. You have 1 or 2 collaboration partners, and you've invited potentially clients or channel partners to present to them at a physical event inside, a venue that you've booked. And you need to come to Canada because you've got potential clients and suppliers, right? And you already have perhaps a minimum viable product. You're presenting it to potential partners, stakeholders, clients, and so forth. And that could also be traction and progress. And that usually is a very good excuse of why you need to be inside Canada, right? Face-to-face event, right? And these are just examples. You could come up with 100 or 1,000 of these. There's some specific questions here about the success rate. So I have to give the general information, and then we can dive deeper into how this success rate, what it means, because on the surface of things, it could seem awkward. That why is the startup visa approval rate not as high as people expected? So Anonymous is asking, what is this? So there's several questions about this. So what is the success rate post of getting a PR after receiving the LOS? Can you please provide very clear responses, as I have been, most of the consultants provide very ambiguous statements. Can you please make it clear to understand the risk associated? And that's just one. There's a couple like that. It's simple. I will give you the official statistic, and then I will tell you why it's at that rate. And then Slava and Ehsan can elaborate also of their own. So the official statistics is approximately 65%. Okay, but this is the aggregated number, right? So every single type of refusal or approval, every single type of letter of support, startup, angel investor. And it may seem there, and there's no business program that is 100%, but this is going around 65%. Now, Slava, what can you tell us about your designated organization's approval rate and what you see that 35% represents in the market that is, pushing this approval rate low? And that's the fact. And as I said, folks, this is the truth, the raw truth, and nothing but the truth. So go ahead, Slava.
Well, considering I'm not a shareholder or director of any of the designated organization, however, I have helped out a lot, do due diligence, defend peer reviews, mentored, issued letters of support. So some of the highlights, I'll highlight one of the organizations, York Entrepreneurial Development Institute, YETI for short. they have been awarded, and it's an international award for the survivability rate of the businesses. Over 86% of the businesses end up living on, surviving after going through that incubation, ended up making money, hiring people. So that's a good statistic for them. They're also in the top 3 when it comes to from the application for permanent residency, post letter of support, to actually granting of that permanent residency. And there are government statistics available for each one of the designated organizations. York Angel Investors, as a different example, they have started, I would say, offering letters of support just in the last couple of years. So people that have gone through them did not get to the point of permanent residency yet. So I can't give you that statistic, but the statistics are available for every single incubator, every single venture capital and angel investment group of what number of letters of support they're issuing and what number of permanent residencies thereafter people achieve.
Okay, thank you, Slava. Ehsan, any insight into that official statistic or what you see creating this 65% positive approvals and 35% official refusals aggregated across the board with startup visa?
I agree with your numbers. The thing is, each year has been different. And that's why in some years we see approval rates on 90%, and then another year drops. I want to shed some light on why all this, ups and downs have been happening and why we have the 60%. Some, first of all, goes back to the quality of the applications we talked about. A lot of them went through this process with not so strong business applications, and so that brought the number of the refusals up. The other thing is that we had a period that we had a lot of applicants, and so the scrutiny was a lot from the IRCC's perspective to make sure that they choose the top out of everyone. Going back to Slava's point, it was a very great point that it seems like people pick similar type of ventures that they want to expand to Canada. Look at it from an IRCC officer's perspective. They want diversity. So if everybody's doing an online platform, and it depends to the time. Like there's a time that everything's about AI, like right now. If you don't have AI, pretty much a lot of people aren't going to look at your application, but you shouldn't, just put it there just to say you have AI. And there was a time, maybe around 2020, everything was a marketplace. So it depends. Don't get thrown off by these numbers. As I would say, it's similar to investment. The time that market is down is the time to entry, because what you see now is the result of the past. And so what is happening right now, it's going to be reflected in the future.
No, that's perfect. Yeah, it's correct. All the historical data is what we've seen from the past. We're not seeing what's happening today. And few facts for everyone. Startups fail. So forget immigration. 90% or more, there's some official statistic that startups within the first 5 years fail, right? So that's that. The second is look at other business immigration programs, right? They're not going to be at 100% either, right? So if you've got like a federal entrepreneurial work permit, or if you put an expression of interest through the entrepreneurial programs of the provinces, will you be 100% invited? No. Will you be 100% interviewed and approved? No. Will you run your business and then be approved for PR? Not 100%. So we have programs that are 90%, 80, 70, and 65. Startup visa is very popular. So you have a big group. And from my point of view, okay, we've discussed this now with the panel members, is because it has the lowest eligibility criteria across all programs. What that means is every single person with not enough qualifying factors, such as education, work history, are applying for this, not knowing what they're getting themselves into, and you're going to get a higher refusal rate. If the other programs in Canada had similar relaxed eligibility criteria, you'd be seeing 50, 60% approval rates. That's a fact. Okay. So There's a question from Khan Mohammed saying, what is the future of the SUV due to the federal employee strike? I believe that anything that's processed inside of Canada will be at a standstill at the moment, but anything that is being processed outside of Canada, such as work permits, will be relatively okay. Processing times have not been affected so far that we've seen, and processing by the incubators, venture capital, and angel investors is still ongoing, right? But for a short time, there will be a standstill, a halt inside Canada processing, whether you're applying for your PR from inside or your work permit from inside. Slava, any insight into this or insight into the future on this?
I would say by the time people will review this video, once you post already on YouTube, it's going to be not a very relevant question because it's a rare strike. It hasn't happened in about 3 years or more.
Yeah.
So probably by the time you slice and dice this video, the strike is going to be over. So total impact within Canada, 1 week extra delay because now they're going to be 1 week bottled up. So I think they're already close in their negotiations. So for those people that are from outside of Canada and haven't seen our news, currently federal workers in Canada, a rare event, but on strike. They want to see an increase in wages. Government offered them 9% over 3 years. They're asking for 13. So they're going to settle on that number sooner or later, and the files will continue being processed.
Exactly. In the bigger picture, having a short disruption like this from inside Canada is not going to significantly affect startup visa. And at the end of the day, it's important to continue your progress as a startup business and to show progress when they come back to work. Here's an interesting question. Is it possible to get VC funding instead of incubator in case you're in a bootstrap stage, early ideation stage, but very innovative idea? How would IRCC perceive it? The idea behind the question is that with VC securing the funds will provide a great start. So I believe the question is, if a VC or angel investor comes into an ideation stage business concept or startup, how will that look to the IRCC? And is it even possible to get funding at that for such a startup? What do you think, Slava? Because you're
absolutely. So currently this month, I'm dealing with 2 files under a venture capital fund that are pretty early, where you really have to understand the technology behind it to actually get excited. It's very technologically heavy. It is nicely packaged for potential patent. It has great total addressable market. There is no one else that is doing whatever they are doing in the exact same way. And they have early interest from other venture capitalists from their own country. So even though to this day, there is nothing that is solid that anyone can say, hey, let me go take it for a test drive, or let me take a look at it, there is enough documentation to prove to us on the venture capital side that this is an investable company. And again, there is also matching interest in other countries for that particular innovation as well. So how will government take a look at it? No one on this panel or any panel will ever know how government looks at this. We can just do our best to make sure that we provide to them best reasoning why we are as angels investing into them or why we are as venture capitalists investing into that particular entity.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, it makes sense, Slava, as well. And I'm sure Ehsan, you agree as well. It's across the board. There's so many variations, and how the government looks at it is to be honest with you, nobody will ever understand. So here's an interesting question. I don't know about costs. So folks, if you're asking about costs or service fees, we're not here to promote any specific business or pushing to sell you something. So we may not be able to answer questions about how much we charge or I charge or anybody charges. Sergey Krupnov is asking a question for Slava. Okay. I would like to ask about the costs associated with project assistance services. Specifically, what are the fees for preparing a project for an incubator, and what other services are available for which additional fees may apply? So you don't have to tell us your fees, Slava, because this is very general and we don't really talk about pricing here in webinars, but perhaps you can shed some light to Sergey's question.
Well, this becomes a one-on-one question because I need to understand better what are you doing. Are
Yeah.
you doing nuclear sciencey stuff, or are you doing a gizmo or a widget? Now, for our team to research anything in the nuclear is going to be a lot different than from us to work on a widget or a gadget. So the answer, as vague as it can get, depends. Where are you now? How many members are in the team? How much of your own funding you have put into it? How mature is that business, or what area is the business in?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And Ehsan, what do you think if a startup comes and approaches you for consulting and vetting them and preparing them for the whole due diligence, admissions, and post-letter of support? What how do you decide on pricing for a startup? Is it like a cookie cutter in your model, or how does it work?
I absolutely echo Slava's comment. Yes, it really depends on what's the business, how much time it's going to take from our business analysts or team to look into this. Is it just so simple and clear to understand, or it's something that we really need to get, and this is something we do, we get Canadian experts, people in that industry involved to tell the truth to us and the applicant. So we recently had a startup in the dental technology, great technology for where they live in, for the region, but in Canada, competitors have already dominated this. So it's great if they want to bring the IP here, but they're not going to be able to sell in Canada. They can just sell in the other regions. It really depends on, and then how much time and effort it's going to take from us. Some founders want to be hands-on. They don't want to outsource everything. And we like to work with them to give them some homework. We work together.
No, yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. It's kind of like a partnership, right? They want to go through the whole process. They want somebody, a trusted advisor, to help them out. And that's how it works. A few other questions. This is more immigration related. One of the team members I'm aware of has a successful letter of support and PR application submitted back in August 2022. They received their work permits in December 2022. The team is already inside Canada working under startups. They have not received any PR response so far. When do you think they can expect at least the PR filing number and possibly the final PR? What help can you and your team provide? Well, thank you, anonymous attendee. We have a lot of anonymous attendees today. I don't know. Gives me the jitters, but good question. When you file online, right now, it may take anywhere from 4 to 6 months to get a temporary file number. That's how Startup Visa right now works. The number will start with an X from IRCC. So you can wait approximately 6 months before you get that, roughly. Sometimes it's 4, sometimes 5, sometimes 6. With the current strike, who knows? It could take a few weeks extra. In terms of the final PR number, that's when an actual human officer, a human being, not an alien, not AI, opens up your files and says, hey, I'm actually going to work on your startup application. That's when you will receive a permanent file number that starts with an E. And that can take anywhere from a year and a half to, let's say, a year and 10 months, because you applied in August 2022, which is good. So we believe that later next year, you will receive that group will receive a permanent file number, maybe sooner. So you have to be ready. You will receive the temporary file number, then the permanent one when actually somebody's opening it up, right? So that's a great question. So here's another question. There's a multi-part question. Sayed Nur Alam. I already have an online educational technology platform running for the past 3 years. I'm planning to set up a branch in Canada with the curriculum that suits the North American system. I plan to set up and invest to some extent and would also need funding to grow. Is that possible for collaboration or getting funding from another investor in Canada? And he's asking if me or Slava, you can answer that question. What do you think, Slava?
Well, there's a few flaws in the question in itself. If you're opening up a branch, that's not good enough. Entire intellectual property has to move to Canada, at least 51% of it, for it even to qualify for Startup Visa as the path for us to issue letter of support. Now, will it qualify? If you're bringing revenues and we can put a value on that continuous business, then of course, angel investment groups, based on potential investment return on that investment, will be offering to you some sort of a term sheet. Again, if you are moving to Canada, if entire intellectual property is moving to Canada, if they can have control of that company here in Canada, then yes, you become that investable company here.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. Yeah, it's not, funding is always more challenging, folks. So when you're overseas, you've got to be inside Canada. That's what I tell most startup founders, co-founders, or sole founder entrepreneurs. If you're outside of Canada and you were looking for funding from inside Canada, it's not going to happen. You've got to be inside of Canada of having any chance of investors, funding, subsidies, grants, and there's a lot of them that are available as well. And that's why many startups actually come to Canada versus other countries in the world, because of all the government support as well, besides the private sector. Couple questions by Ash. What's the cost of your services? Ash, unfortunately, we won't be talking about cost of our services. If you want to book a consultation, obviously my prices are online, but every case is different and we're not promoting services right now or the pricing. Could you also talk about how many applications you worked on so far and what's your success rate? So Ash, for me, I work with over 50 startup visa groups, whether I consult them, whether I represent them legally, right? Because a lot of people come and consult with me on a one-on-one basis just to get guidance. Some of them request help from A to Z with us. So at any time, we are helping many startups. And as well in terms of a success rate. So if I told you it's 100%, I'm lying, right? Right now, our success rate is anywhere from 85% plus. And that's a fact. If anyone, I dare any immigration practitioner to come out and give their official statistics out. Nobody will do it, but I will, because we're confident in our services. What about you, Slava and Ehsan, about the success rate of the cases that you've helped in terms of the startup?
I'll talk from a perspective, because I deal mainly, think of it like a business to business. So I work with companies that Ehsan represents, Reza represents, and other similar entities. So I process and I work with about 20 to 40 startups based on that every single month. So if we're going to go now back in history and take a 5-year historical look, so of course, not 100% of them went on to that permanent residency. So if based on, let's say, just a snapshot of people that applied 2-3 years ago and already got their file numbers, already got either permission or not for permanent residency, we are somewhere between 95-98% of those files, we're seeing that they're approved. I would say 2 or 3 I have seen failed in the last 3 years.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good. Ehsan, what about you? Where do you see your success rate at?
I would say our numbers are around the 80 to 90% right now with the startups that they work with us. A lot of them, our business is also B2B. We primarily, although we do B2C, we have clients that directly reach to us, but we primarily provide service to immigration law firms. We work with their clients, we consult on them, and there have been cases that, as you said, Reza, I know Ingve does that as well, very flexible. We work with do-it-yourself people as well. We just consult on their cases. That a lot of the fate of what they've done is on their shoulders. That's where we see the risk sometimes, and often the refusals, because they get the consultation, but they choose to do things their own way. And of course, they have been talking to other consultants as well. But what I'm seeing is that the rate is changing. The IRCC's numbers are changing in terms of how many their quota has changed, so their restrictions. A lot of as I said, again, a lot of what we see today, it's the result of past. startup visa started off as relatively easier. Then with the good reputation, there was a pouring flood of applications, and IRCC started being a little bit tough. And now they've been more reasonable. There's been a lot more communication with, especially with the peer review panel that they have. Finally, they let industry experts into their system to give them a little bit more reasonable criteria and measures.
No, makes sense, Ehsan. Thank you. And I'm gonna come out and say this. So it's easy that me or even Launchpath or designated organizations approval rates would drop. Like we can do 60%, yeah. But when we're picky on who we work with, or at least with Launch or designated, then you're like these, I always mention this, you're like these evil prosecutors in those criminal crime drama shows where they only pick the cases they know they can win, right? The cases they know they can't win, they usually settle on the side. They don't take it, right? So the same thing I think goes with designated organizations and Launchpath, and even us if we're representing a client from A to Z. If we see there's red flags, if we see there's eligibility issues, or if we see there's some discrepancies and there's a chance of refusal, well, we're not going to take it on, right? And we're not desperate enough to take it on. And that's the key. And that's why you see higher approval rates versus lower. And I think that's the same case with designated organizations, Slava, right?
Right. So we do pick best of the best cases, better represented, better presented cases. And my actual statistic from 300, I believe I already mentioned it in the video, that out of 300 applicants in a specific period of time, we've only chosen one to proceed with to the interview even stage, because everything else we received was just not ready. And we did reply to absolutely every single one of them for the reasons why they're not proceeding, telling them, yes, they can reapply when they're ready. But out of 300, one was the one that we ended up proceeding with. So the chances of that 1 out of 300 being good and later on surviving and getting to a permanent residency is also very high. We picked best of the best.
No, it makes perfect sense, right? If we had a wide net and we got 100, like even myself, or the designated organizations you represent, Slava, if you had 300 applications in a month and you accepted 200, or if Launchpath, you had 50 people approaching in 1 week and you accepted 49, of course it would be 50%, 60% approval rate. It's common sense, folks. Okay, immigration is not rocket science, is not astrophysics, it's not even AI, okay? It's basic common sense, right? So we're coming to an end, but I'm just going to do 1 or 2 questions because we got to head off. We got a million things to do. Govinda, I think Govinda had raised the hand. I don't know. So here we go. There's a couple of questions I'll just do on the fly. I think just Sayed, no, we answered Sayed's question. Yes. Hold on, folks. A little bit slow.
We still have 22 open questions, 23 answer questions. We're definitely not going to be able to go through all.
Yeah, we won't be, but reach out to us, folks. You have Slava, you can Google them anytime. You've got Ehsan, Launchpath, and of course you can Google me or subscribe to my YouTube channel. Javed had some questions. So Javed, we've answered some of the questions already. Preparation before coming to you to save time. The key is, like, if you want to request a recording of this webinar, reach out to us, info@ingwe.ca. We'll send it out. Ehsan went through it. Slava did as well, what the preparatory work is. So the more you can get done before you approach us or any of us, it will save time and energy, right? And in terms of having a great international business and having a platform for e-commerce, yeah, it can be innovative as long as we see that there is a market for it. There's validation of your concept. And of course, that's the expertise of Slava and Launchpath with Ehsan. So make sure that you can reach out to any of us. And then, let's see, in terms of the new processing time, Sergey was asking, anyone who's applied, I think, in the last 6 months can be considered in the new processing time. And then Khan, you had a question about work permit, and it's been more than a year and they haven't even received the work permit yet. But we received our PR number. So it got lost in the embassy. So Khan, reality, they don't have AI, and if they do, it's not working properly. So you need to reapply. Okay, you hit them with a reapplication. But if you have specific questions, reach out to us. Ash says, thank you guys for the great webinar and answering questions. I'll contact you to get more personal consult. I'll need to leave the meeting before 10. Yeah, we all have to leave, folks. And somebody's asking if IRCC appreciates startups who generate revenue overseas. Yes, it is gold. Having revenue is probably one of the golden standards of being a startup. And remember, you need innovation as well. So don't come to us with a restaurant idea. And then, yeah, if you have any other questions, let us know, folks. Reach out to us. And we've covered a lot of the questions already in the webinar. Reach out to us at info@ingway.ca. We're going to send it out to all the attendees as well, the recording of this webinar, and you can go through it, fast forward. Make sure you don't fast forward me because I always speak quite fast, or you can slow us down or just watch the sections that are more prevalent to you. Okay. Thank you, Slava. Thank you, Ehsan. It was amazing. And one last piece of advice that both of you want to give to our attendees today. If it's just one thing that you have to tell them for them to take in and absorb, what would it be?
So from the processing point of view, I'll give you my biggest pet peeve because I participate in so many designated organizations and I see exact same applicant applying to a few. I blacklist them right away because it is free for them to apply. It is free for them for our services to vet. So if someone has to spend an hour, 2 hours vetting, assessing, answering, they're doing it for free. And in the end, they're just shopping it around and taking it elsewhere. So pick one designated entity and work with them, because if I see your application in more than one, I'm already giving you a strike.
Yeah, no, that is amazing, Slav. And that's what most people do. And that's why I think one of the attendees was asking why Empower is charging 20,000 upfront, non-refundable, just to even, consider the file. So that is golden, folks, what just Slava said. If you're applying to 100 places, it's not going to work. Okay. And Ehsan, from your point of view, what is the one final piece of advice that you want to give our attendees about the startup visa space, so they can, that would be the key golden piece of advice to take away from this webinar?
For sure, it might not be totally relevant to the startup and the technology, but it's related to this process, is that your documentation. Make sure the information you provide from number one form you fill out all the way to the final submission, it's consistent. Don't come up with different numbers, different dates, different information. This is very important if we are dealing with immigration, with VCs, with different, with customers. You can convince them, but IRCC is looking for these inconsistencies. Make sure your information is shared across all the stakeholders. Same.
Yeah, no, that exactly. So discrepancy, consistency, and follow through. Those are key. Folks, thank you for joining us in our first series of a multitude of startup visa webinars we're planning this year. And as I said, it's the truth, nothing but the truth. So help me, the IRCC. Thank you, Slava, for joining us. Thank you, Ehsan from Launchpath. Appreciate it. Take care, folks.
Thank you, Reza.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Take care, everyone. Have a good one. Bye-bye.